Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here, and it's time for another reaction request. If you have a video that you would like me to react to, check the description below. There's a link that'll take you to a Google document with all the relevant information. So today, I'm going to be looking at a video titled Defunctland, The History of Captain EO. And this is on the Defunctland channel. Never heard of Defunctland or Captain EO, so I have no idea what I'm getting into here. But I'm interested to find out. Let's go ahead and get it started. Don't skip to the end. Here we go. I thought I pushed it. Here we go. 3D. You're watching the 2D version. So, like, actual 3D, I mean, I don't have any 3D glasses ready, so I think I'll stick with the 2D, I guess. If we're talking that kind of 3D. Defunctland presents. Episode 17, Captain EO. Yeah, I have no idea what this is. What are we talking about? This is probably a bit more impressive in 3D, because without the 3D, this is...
Defunctland, a show about extinct amusement park rides. My name is Kevin Kurzel, and today we will be
interesting.
Disney's 4D sci-fi film, Captain EO. This film debuted at Disneyland and Epcot Center in 1986, and it was suggested by all of these great commenters.
So we're talking Disney.
The story of Captain EO starts in 1984 and involves many
prominent
figures in the film and theme park industry. The first is Michael Jackson. Coming off of the success of his hit album Thriller in 1982 and the 14-minute music video for this single in 1983, Jackson was on the top of the world. He had reached the height of his career and was setting new standards for what it meant to be a pop star. Jackson was also a huge Disney fanatic. According to his family, Michael was obsessed with learning about Walt's life, and he greatly enjoyed Disney's theme parks as well.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me, honestly.
Sometimes after hours and sometimes in disguise. After the success of the Thriller music video, Jackson was eager to produce more films. He was advised to contact Disney about the possibility of producing a movie with the studio. This is at the same time that Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg entered the Walt Disney Company. Eisner was the CEO of Paramount Pictures, and Katzenberg was his president of production. When Eisner became the CEO of Disney in 1984, he brought Katzenberg with him to head the company's film division. Nearly 20 years after the death of Walt Disney, the company was in shambles. They were failing practically everywhere they turned, mainly in their studios. The new management was their best hope at avoiding an acquisition or a complete dissolvement. If you remember the Defunctland on Extraterrestrial Alien Encounter, you will remember that Michael Eisner took advice from his teenage son Breck, who thought Disneyland was lame. If you remember the Defunctland on Videopolis, Eisner took this to heart, creating a teenage dance club to capitalize on the popularity of MTV. Lucky for Eisner, music videos and pop music had a new king that coincidentally loved Disney. Katzenberg was the first to receive word that Michael Jackson was interested in partnering with the studio, and he personally took Jackson on a tour of Walt Disney Imagineering, mentioning that Jackson should consider starring in a Disneyland attraction. Around the same time, Michael Eisner was giving his own tour of the Imagineering headquarters to filmmaker George Lucas. In 1991, the two had created Raiders of the Lost Ark for Paramount together. Eisner was trying to convince Lucas to develop some attractions for Disney parks, once again going after the lucrative teenage market. And as we know, he succeeded. Lucas expressed interest in creating a Star Wars-based attraction.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's George Lucas? Doesn't even look the...
Jackson's interest in producing a film with Disney,
like the same person without the beard.
Suggested that he film an exclusive 3D movie for Disneyland, in the style of the Thriller film. Jackson agreed, but demanded that either Steven Spielberg or George Lucas come on board in order to ensure that the film was quality. Spielberg was preoccupied with his own film, The Color Purple, but Lucas was already at work with Imagineering on Star Tours, so he agreed to help with the project, and he immediately invited a few fellow filmmakers to help him. The casting of the villain was originally supposed to go to Shelley Duvall, known for her role in The Shining, but she dropped out due to the elaborate costume work that she knew would make the production too uncomfortable. It instead was
she's had enough uncomfortable productions, I guess.
Houston. Rusty Lemrand, who had recently produced the sci-fi comedy Electric Dreams, would write the script. And Francis Ford Coppola, the writer, director, and producer of The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2, as well as Apocalypse Now, would direct. Coppola also produced Lucas's American Graffiti, and this marked the first time that the two had worked together since Lucas left Apocalypse Now to make Star Wars. Imagineering had considered having John Landis, the director of Jackson's Thriller music video, direct the film, but Lucas made the decision that Coppola would direct with little deliberation. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, we don't have enough high-profile artists working on this film.
It's a lot of high-profile people.
John Napier, the Tony Award-winning costume designer of Cats, was to help with costume designs and in-theater effects. Rich Baker, a makeup artist from the Thriller video, was a makeup supervisor. Tom Berman, a now 5-time Emmy Award-winning makeup artist, was hired to do makeup for Houston. Jeff Hornaday, the choreographer of Flashdance, was to be the choreographer. Harrison Ellenshaw, the visual effects artist behind films such as Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, would assist with special effects. Lance Anderson, a creature designer on Ghostbusters, helped design a variety of creatures for the film, and James Horner, who would go on to compose the score of Titanic, wrote Captain EO's score. So believe it or not, they were over budget. The film itself, not including the show buildings or in-theater effects, cost $23.7 million to produce.
Wow.
That's roughly $1.4 million per minute of the film when it was released in 1986. And adjusting for inflation, wow. It was at the time the most expensive film ever made for its length.
Probably even more now, because that's 2017.
The Imagineers became increasingly frustrated. They did not like having outsiders spearhead a project in their parks, and their anger only escalated when more outside contractors were hired to cut costs. Imagineering was of course not excluded. One Imagineer in particular, Rick Rothschild, was given 3 days to come up with story pitches for Eisner, Jackson, and Lucas. One idea was to have a short film of Jackson going to Disneyland after hours, with the animatronics of various rides coming to life. Another would have played off Jackson's love for Peter Pan by having him play a young fairy whose forest is attacked by an evil ice witch. He would then sing her to death and save him and his friends. Eisner, Jackson, and Lucas loved this idea, but the new film was already set to play in Tomorrowland, and the premise was a much better fit for Fantasyland. Rothschild changed the film's location to space and renamed it to Space Knights. After this, Coppola began pre-production, suggesting naming Jackson's character after Eos, the Greek goddess of the dawn, as he would be bringing light to a dark planet.
Oh, Eo had some light. Eo.
Oh, that's where the EO comes in. Okay.
He brought some color. Eo.
Michael told the crew that he wanted the planet and its character designs to be scary, because he felt that children liked to be frightened. While Katzenberg was doing the majority of the executive creative direction, Eisner still treated EO as one of his pet projects. He was banking on Captain EO being the proof of concept for more adult-themed attractions. Production began in early 1985, and the film was shot in 3 weeks. Coppola was present for this production phase, but Lucas had little involvement. This was troubling to everyone involved, as most believed he would be driving the project as he did his others. Once principal photography was done,
Coppola's still pretty
not great.
Good.
The main issue was that its story was
good person to have in charge.
Reportedly hid it from Eisner while they scrambled to fix it. Unfortunately, the creators were already busy by this point. Coppola was creating Peggy Sue Got Married, and Lucas was working on the Troubled Star Tours and the infinitely more troubled Howard the Duck. This left Lemon and Jackson to do reshoots. These were so impromptu that at one point they had to use a toilet's ball cock as the head for Minor Domo, as they couldn't find the actual puppet. In another spite to Imagineering, Lucas gave the footage to ILM instead of the effects artist at Disney. This caused even more delays as Lucas tried his hand in fixing the mess. After finally seeing the footage, Disney executives panicked. They had no idea how many crotch thrusts Jackson had incorporated into his dance numbers.
That's kind of what he does.
Like,
what do you expect?
Cut out of the final film, but this was not the only issue. Michael's speaking voice, which sounded like a small child whispering a secret, did not fit well with his commanding character.
Maybe we can outrun him.
The producers contemplated lowering or dubbing over it, but no one wanted to mention it to Jackson, so they just left it in. Despite these issues, everyone agreed that Michael's stage presence during the musical sequences was fantastic, and the effects were spectacular on the big screen.
Is this when people hadn't realized how weird Michael Jackson was yet?
The wizardry of Lucas.
Just how strange he comes across.
The phenomenal music and dance of Michael Jackson. Captain EO. In spectacular 3D. Coming September 19th to Disneyland and Walt Disney World, and nowhere else in the universe.
On September 12, 1986, a year and a half after the production started, Captain EO opened at Epcot. The film replaced Magic Journeys, an opening day 3D movie at Epcot's Imagination Pavilion. 6 days after its opening at Epcot, Captain EO replaced Disneyland's Magic Journeys, which had opened in 1984 in the Tomorrowland space stage. In 1986, the theater had been renovated for Captain EO into the Magic Eye Theater, where Magic Journeys played for a short time before Captain EO premiered.
A few years ago, the Walt Disney Company and Kodak invented
Super hot Larry
a way to make 3D movies. An extraordinary camera was custom built and used only once. To create a magical 3D fantasy shown exclusively at Walt Disney World in Florida and here at Disneyland. The show was so popular that Disney and Kodak decided to use the camera again for an even more spectacular show.
Lemon was the driving force behind using live special effects such as fog and lasers. This created one of the first 4D films. Captain EO had its premiere at Disneyland on September 18, 1986, with a star-studded ceremony that included guests such as Alan Thicke and O.J. Simpson. There were also numerous characters portraying various aliens from the film. Michael Jackson was not present, as he had decided to escape media attention for a bit. He did, however, publish a photo of him sleeping in an oxygen chamber, which he claimed was to promote Captain EO. He also showed up for test screenings, either in disguise or in the projection booth, wanting to see how audiences reacted. To celebrate the opening of the film and satisfy audiences, Disneyland stayed open for 60 continuous hours. Guests flocked to the two theaters to watch Michael Jackson in space on the big screen. So how did it turn out? The movie starts with a narrator introducing the film.
A universe of good and evil, where a small group struggles to bring freedom to the countless worlds of despair. A ragtag band, led by the infamous Captain EO.
We then meet the crew of Captain EO's ship. There's the two-headed ID and Odie, the flying fuzzball, Major Domo, Minor Domo, who fits in Major Domo, and...
Okay.
Major Domo warns ID and Odie not to
seemed very Star Wars.
approach the planet, but then they trip the intrusion alarm.
Intrusion alarm! Battle alert!
Everyone panics and
Star
blames
Wars,
Hooter
but
for
even
eating
more
the star
puppety.
names. Then Captain EO enters and takes command of his ship.
Too close. We're going in.
Sir, the ship is in absolutely no condition to go into battle. I thought we'd begin by cleaning up Hooter's bunk.
Rush, Order! Listen, the command considers us a bunch of losers. But we're gonna do it right this time because we're the best.
They are confronted by a patrol ship and they attempt to escape it. Commander Bog comes through a signal to contact Captain EO, and EO reassures him that everything is going fine, and that they will successfully deliver their gift to the Supreme Leader. After evading the ship, the crew crashes onto the planet and are immediately captured by the Supreme Leader's guards. They are brought to the Supreme Leader, where Captain EO delivers his gift of music.
Let me see this gift!
Not only see, Your Highness, but hear.
The entire crew begins to use their equipment and bodies to play an original song, We Are Here to Change the World. EO uses his dance powers to turn the Supreme Leader's guards into colorful dancers that join him in defeating the Supreme Leader. He does this successfully, and she transforms into a beautiful goddess. In the longest goodbye of all time, Jackson leaves by performing another original song, Another Part of Me. While a hit with Jackson fans, the film was not a critical success. The Los Angeles Times wrote, for all its wondrous imagery, Captain EO is nothing more than the most elaborate rock video in history, like a hollow chocolate Easter bunny. It's a glorified surface over a void. No one expects an amusement park diversion to be Gone with the Wind, but given that list of credits and the film's lavish budget, audiences have a right to expect more than empty films. On March 20th, 1987, less than a year after the film premiered in the United States, the film opened at Tokyo Disneyland. Years later, the film debuted as an opening day attraction at Euro Disneyland on April.
They probably liked it in Japan. Of course there's a furry in the audience.
On July 6, 1994, nearly 8 years after the attraction debuted at Epcot, Captain EO was closed. In 1996, Captain EO was
a weird
the first
commercial.
and only time on television, premiering on MTV. And that same year, the film would close at Tokyo Disneyland on September 1st. The next year, on April 7th, the film was closed at Disneyland in the United States. A year after that, the film closed at Euro Disney on August 17th, 1998. All 4 attractions were replaced by possible future addition to Defunctland, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. But this was not the end of Captain EO's story, because on June 25th, 2009, Michael Jackson died. In September 2009, Disney closed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in Disneyland, inviting Jackson's friends and family to watch Captain EO in private screenings. A few months later, on December 18th, Disney announced that Captain EO would be returning to Disneyland and Epcot as a special tribute to Michael Jackson.
Okay.
On February 23rd, 2010, the Captain EO tribute opened at Disneyland. On June 12th, it would open at Disneyland Paris. On July 1st, it would open at Tokyo Disneyland. And on July 2nd, it would open at Epcot. Audiences were initially interested, but years after Jackson's death, the film was becoming less and less relevant. On June 22, 2014, Disneyland closed its Captain EO tribute, replacing it with, of course, Star Wars Path of the Jedi. The attraction closed in Tokyo on June 30, 2014, and was replaced by Stitch Encounter, a show where guests can interact with Stitch similar to Turtle Talk with Crush. On April 12, 2015, Captain EO was closed in Disneyland Paris, and was replaced by the Disney and Pixar Short Film Festival. On December 6, 2015, the final Captain EO tribute would be closed at Epcot, also being replaced by the Pixar Short Film Festival. So why did it close? The first time. Well, attendance dipped throughout the years, as most attractions of its type do. There were some factors that contributed to this, the main one being Michael Jackson's many controversies. As the allegations toward Jackson came out, Disney decided that it was best to distance itself from him, resulting in its closure. Captain EO was a new direction for Disney parks, and it was produced by some of the biggest talents of its time. Its troubled production, release, and closure have not stopped the film from being a classic. It is classic 80s, classic Eisner, and most of all, classic Michael Jackson.
Okay. Guess there's something to be said for that. Yeah, I'd never even heard of it. Like, I'm not really in the loop of all this deep Disney lore. And I mean, also, something that came out before I was even born, so what can you do? But definitely interesting. An interesting idea for a channel, just going into old theme park lore. Like, that's all they do, I guess. Yeah, that's interesting. But, yeah, cool video. I definitely learned about something I had no clue about. I mean, Michael Jackson made this film with Lucas and Coppola, and it was basically just a Michael Jackson music video with some Star Wars puppets in it, apparently. Which I guess is fine. And, I mean, I guess the fact it definitely sounds like it wasn't a complete disaster either. Like, if it only really went away because of the scandals, and then they brought it back after he died, and it had a decent run after that, until it just saw diminishing returns, of course. Yeah, seems like a modest... I don't know if it returned its investment, because it was very expensive. Probably not, but it seems like it was decently well received. So, yeah. Anyway, not really much else to say beyond that. An interesting story. Hope you liked the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.